India. George Fernandes is undoubtedly the greatest casualty of the Tehelka revelations, but his resignation remains a bit of a mystery. During the first 2 days when it was expected, it didn't happen, but on Thursday, when everyone thought he had possibly weathered the storm, he went. What happened? And more importantly, what went wrong? With me to answer those questions is George Fernandes himself. Mr. Fernandes, let's start with a question that's on everyone's lips. Did you resign or were you pushed?
I resigned.
It's often said that your resignation was a sacrifice to appease public anger.
No, my resignation had only one major purpose, and that purpose was to reassure the people at large, and particularly the troops out there from Siachen down to name the place, that the Defense Ministry was in good shape, that they had nothing to worry, and all the campaign that was going on was a tissue of lies.
Okay, I want very much to talk at length about the reasons why you resigned, but first let's talk about the immediate circumstances surrounding your resignation. Let's start with the cabinet meeting on the evening of Tuesday the 13th. How many times at that meeting did you offer your resignation?
Well, I said that I would like to go.
How many times did you say that?
3 times.
3 times?
Not in a row, but on 3 occasions.
And what was the response?
Well, there was unanimity there from the Prime Minister, the Home Minister, downwards to every member of the Council of Ministers present there. In one voice they said no.
So the Prime Minister on 3 separate occasions at the meeting on Tuesday the 13th declined your offer of resignation.
That's right.
Let's come to the next day. On the 14th of Wednesday, the National Democratic Alliance had a meeting. Did you offer to resign at that meeting?
Yes, I did.
How many times?
Well, I can't quite recollect, because that was a meeting in which various people were speaking now and then.
It said that you offered on 2 separate occasions at that meeting. Is that correct?
Well, I am very distinct about one, but maybe 2.
What happened when you made the offer on that day?
Well, it was the same response from everybody.
Including the Prime Minister?
And this time it was not just the members of the Council of Ministers, because members of Council of Ministers were not there in terms of not all the members of the Council of Ministers.
But the entire NDA was unanimous?
Yes, that's right. It's the NDA, so therefore leaders of all the parties attend the NDA meeting, and they were of one view, except for one person there who felt that I should resign.
With the exception of this one person, everyone else was unanimous that you must not resign.
That's right.
And once again at that meeting, the Prime Minister rejected your offer of resignation.
Yes.
So on the Tuesday and the Wednesday, on 4 occasions, possibly 5 occasions, you offered your resignation and the Prime Minister firmly rejected it. What then, simply in terms of circumstances and developments, changed within 24 hours to necessitate your resigning on Thursday?
Well, between Tuesday and Thursday, we had Parliament on all the 3 days, and this matter first figured in Parliament in the afternoon of Tuesday. On Wednesday, the Parliament was not allowed to function. I was ready with a statement.
And Wednesday evening, the Prime Minister once again rejected at the India meeting your offer of resignation. So what happened on Thursday?
Yes. On Thursday again, Parliament was not allowed to function, and I was ready there with a statement.
Yes, but your government must have anticipated that the opposition wouldn't let Parliament function, so what?
So what happened was that it's not what happened inside Parliament. Across the country, and for that matter perhaps across the world, word went round that the whole defense establishment of India was a den of corrupt people. In fact, these were some of the headlines, and this went right across the country. The people started worrying at one end as to what's happening to our defense. People whom we had trusted as being clean and trying to set things right seem to be as rotten as anyone else.
You're talking about the mood in the country. Let me point out a meeting that was held on Thursday where the Prime Minister had a meeting with L.K. Advani, Jaswant Singh, and possibly some others, including perhaps Brijesh Mishra and Pramod Mahajan. Were you asked to resign, or were you advised to resign as a result of the outcome of that meeting?
No, I was not asked to resign. I was not advised to resign. I had decided on that day that I will resign.
You had decided before this meeting happened on Thursday morning that you would resign?
Yes, because my thought was with me from Tuesday evening.
There is a report in the press that the Prime Minister sent Jaswant Singh to you on Thursday to ask for your resignation.
Well, the fact is that I went to Jaswant Singh.
At what time on Thursday did you go to Jaswant?
sometime around noon.
Shortly after this earlier meeting that I mentioned had finished.
Well, I'm not aware of that meeting.
When you went to Jaswant, what did you say?
I carried with me the note that I was preparing, because I had decided that day that I will go on television and make a statement about some of the points that had been made against me.
And you went to Jaswant Singh with this note and you said, what? I've come to resign?
Yes, I told him that this is my plan. This is what I intend doing.
What did he say?
Well, he had his reservations, but I said there's no way of dealing with it in any other. There's no other way of dealing with it, and I must.
Did he try and dissuade you?
Well, everybody knew my mind, and I decided that I had to resign.
Why did you go to Jaswant Singh? Why didn't you go to the Prime Minister?
Because Jaswant and I are very close friends. We share not just the same block where our offices are located, but we share much more.
What and how did you inform the Prime Minister? Did Jaswant Singh do that for you, or did you then thereafter go to the Prime Minister?
Well, I had worked out my own schedule for the day, and that schedule included a meeting with the Prime Minister later in the day.
What time did that happen?
Well, that meeting got delayed for the reason that the statement which I was to present to the country through the television took a little extra time.
So when did you meet the PM?
I met the PM when on my way to the studio, and that was around 7 o'clock in the evening.
So you mean till 7 in the evening, the PM had not heard directly from you that you wanted to resign?
My feeling is that he hadn't heard directly from me, but I'm sure that he was aware of it.
In other words, if someone tipped him off, Jaswant Singh may have tipped him off.
No, it's not. I wouldn't say that. Yes, maybe.
When you met the PM at 7 in the evening on Thursday, what did you say to him?
Well, I gave him my resignation, along with a copy of the statement that I was going to make, and said that I have to be in the studio in the next 15 minutes. It's already late. I should have been there at this hour, and so I won't stay further with you. I'll see you later.
How long were you with him for?
I was with him maybe for 5 minutes.
What did he say when he was given your resignation?
Well, it's obvious that he was not happy about it.
Did he try and dissuade you?
Well, because I expressed my views to him, and I said, Atal ji, इसमें अभी हम कोई नए सोच के लिए तैयार नहीं हैं.
And he accepted quietly
He
without
accepted
demand.
it, yes, he accepted it.
Isn't that strange? 4, maybe 5 times in the preceding 36 hours, you had tried to offer your resignation, and on each and every occasion he had forcefully struck it down. Yet suddenly at 7 o'clock on Thursday, as you say, quietly without demur, he accepts.
Well, he didn't accept it without demur. He said, this is not the end of the road.
What did
He
he mean?
gave me a big hug and he said, this is not the end of the road.
What did he mean?
Well, I think what he meant was that if you are insisting on it, I accept it, and since your concern is the morale of the troops out there and how they must be thinking over the whole situation here, and particularly what they must be thinking about you, then what could he do?
Would you say that he accepted with reluctance?
Yeah, I have no doubt about that.
With unhappiness?
Yes, I have no doubt about that also.
Let's come to the statement you made that evening, 15 minutes after you handed over your statement to the Prime Minister. You went to Doordarshan studios, you recorded a statement, an unprecedented thing for a minister to do in the circumstances, and many people hearing you felt that you had quite effectively refuted all the allegations that had been made against you. And then you ended that refutation at the very point when you had cleared your name by resigning. That's a very contradictory thing to do. People who clear their names don't resign.
Karan, in my statement, at the fag end of my statement, I made the point why I was resigning, and it had to do with the morale of the troops, with the morale of the defense ministry.
Can I quote that to you? You said, to uphold the morale of the armed forces and to prevent further damage to our national defense, I have decided to resign from the government.
That's right.
And that is the truth. The only reason?
That is the truth.
That
yes.
is the only reason?
Well, the other reasons are that House was not sitting. If the House was sitting, it may not have become necessary for me to resign. I would have gone with that statement to the House and made myself clear on every point that anybody had.
Mr. Fernandes, let me point out some of the contradictions. Earlier we spoke about the incredible contradictions to do with the circumstances surrounding your resignation, the fact that you'd offered it, it had been refused. Suddenly, without explanation, 3 days later, it's accepted. although, as you said, with reluctance. Let me now point out the contradictions to do with the reasons you've given for resigning. You say you resigned to uphold the morale of the armed forces. 24 hours later, the NDA officially announced that you were the best defense minister since independence. Explain to me then, why should the best defense minister since independence have to resign to uphold the morale of the armed forces?
Well, the best, that's their perception. Perhaps there are other people who hold a different perception.
Yes, but
about,
if the NDA feels that, you don't lose the best defense minister. You hold on to him. Morale would be affected if he was lost. You don't lose him to improve morale. It's turning things upside down and inside out.
Well, then if there is a fault in this, then it's my fault. You can't fault anybody else on that.
This is one of the reasons why people think George Fernandes' resignation has something, to use a colloquialism, fishy about it. He didn't resign, he was pushed.
Well, there are lots of stories that go around, starting from one of them being that it is the President of India who told the Prime Minister, get him out.
Do you believe that's right?
I don't believe it.
But you report it.
Pardon?
But you're reporting it to me.
I'm reporting it because it appeared in the papers.
But there is another explanation put out. Within hours of your resignation, you announced your resignation at 7:30 or 8 in the evening on Thursday. At 10:15 that same evening, Pramod Mahajan on national television said that the reason for your resigning was not because you were doing so to uphold the morale of the armed forces, but because, as he said, you stood down to permit a proper inquiry into the allegations of defense deals. A completely different explanation.
Well, I'm hearing it for the first time. I have not seen it also.
24 hours later, speaking again on a national television channel, but this time in Hindi, you said that you had been forced to resign because you had wanted to make a statement in Parliament to clear your name, but since Parliament wasn't functioning properly, you had no alternative but to make that statement in public. But as a sitting minister, when Parliament was technically in session, you felt it was proper to resign before doing so. That's a third different explanation.
Yeah, but that doesn't alter the essential reason. Because when Parliament was debating this, when Parliament was not allowed to function, and on the floor of the House, there were people, senior members of Parliament, who were making indecent gestures towards me and calling me a thief, in quote unquote, a thief.
That you're not the sort of man who resigns because people make indecent
No, I need to
gestures and
fight
call
this.
you a thief.
You've
been called worse. You revel in it.
Yes, it's not, that's not the point. I revel in it if it only hurts me.
Mr. Fernandes,
but when it hurts the security of the country, then I just can't afford to revel in
Mr.
it.
Fernandes, 3 different explanations for your resignation within 24 hours of it happening suggest that none of them are correct, that they're all covers, that the truth is that the resignation itself has something wrong with it. You were pushed. I'm coming back to that central point. This confusion about explanations suggests you were pushed.
There is absolutely no confusion, not in my mind. And I'm sure that it isn't there in anybody else's mind. You, of course, would like to believe, otherwise I can't help it.
Why then is it that Brajesh Mishra continues in his office? Allegations were made against you by your former party treasurer ArcheAge, and they were given a certain credibility that led to your having to resign. Allegations have been made against Brajesh Mishra by his former party president, Bangaru Lakshman. Yet he continues in his office. Why?
Well, you know, he's an appointee in that job. I am a person who has been sent by the people, and I have to go back to the people. So between him and me, there is a world of difference. You were an appointee by the Prime Minister
as Defence Minister. You were retained during his confidence. Why should you, in a sense, have lost his confidence to the point that he accepted your resignation, and yet Brajesh Mishra retained that confidence?
No, Karan, I want to say with all the emphasis at my command that the Prime Minister has confidence in me. I do not believe that the Prime Minister has at any point in time lost confidence in me.
Then let me turn the question around and say, has the Prime Minister treated you unfairly? Or is he treating Brajesh Mishra, in quotes, more than fairly? Well, why is Mishra retained and you dispensed with?
Well, I am not dispensed with. I chose to go out.
Permitted to go?
Well, permission ultimately when a senior minister of the government who is under attack and he chooses to make a statement and he chooses to go out in public and fight it out.
Can I interrupt you?
Please.
Even your own party men, your 3 ministers who withdrawn from the government, your remaining 9 MPs aren't convinced by this. Isn't this the fight that they are waging today? Don't treat people unequally. Don't discriminate against George Fernandes. That's what they're saying.
Well, I have been trying to persuade them not to think on those lines. I am trying to persuade them to accept that what I am doing is in the larger interest
And you
of
failed,
national
forgive me.
security.
As of the moment we are recording this interview Sunday afternoon in Delhi, you have failed. None of them are prepared to withdraw their resignation, and demands from them that Brijesh Mishra should also go continue.
Well, you see, their resignation has to do more with their loyalty, their friendship, and the love that they have for me.
And not a principle which is important?
Well, principles are there, but this is essentially the reason for that.
Let me put to you an explanation that is being talked about in circles in Delhi. People say that George Fernandes was pushed because it was the only way the Prime Minister could protect the Prime Minister's office, maybe even members of the Prime Minister's house. Because if George hadn't been sacrificed, fingers would have pointed all the way up. So George had to go to protect the Prime Minister, perhaps his family, perhaps his office.
No, I think the opponents or the enemies of this government who are demanding the resignation of the entire government, starting from the Prime Minister downwards, couldn't be making that kind of a distinction.
Let me quote to you what people say. They say George Fernandes is a sacrificial lamb.
No, that may sound very biblical, but it is not true.
They say
It's
that
not
George
in this
Fernandes has accepted it, perhaps with a martyr's halo, but he's been pushed.
case. I refute it.
They say that George Fernandes is behind his party MPs who are now raising voices for Brijesh Mishra's resignation. They say he is behind his party ministers who won't return.
Karan, I am a man who fights up front. I don't fight by keeping my guns on someone else's shoulders. All my life I have fought, and it's 52 years of public life. I have fought straight from
So
the
you're
front.
sticking to the line that you went because you wanted to uphold the morale of the defense forces.
That's right.
Then let's talk for a moment about some of the allegations made by ArcheAge, not against you, although most of his allegations were about you, but by allegations made by the same man against Yashwant Sinha, because he says of Yashwant Sinha, and I'm quoting once again, that he helped one of ArcheAge's brothers obtain a loan of 30 crore, and that in turn he received 50 lakhs. Yet Sinha survives in government and you don't.
Well, let me make the point that I do not believe that this allegation is true.
You don't have to believe it, because the same thing could have been said about the allegations made against you.
No, but I have, you see, just as I don't believe the points that he has made about me.
But your resignation was accepted.
No,
Sinha's hasn't even been asked
No,
for.
no. Now you are confusing the whole issue. You are asking me about the charges against Yashwant Sinha. I don't believe them to be true.
I'm not asking about the charges against Yashwant Sinha. I'm not asking you to comment on the charges. I'm asking you to comment on the fact that the same man in the same tape makes charges against you which are taken seriously, but the charges he makes against Yashwant Sinha are obviously ignored because nothing happens to Sinha.
Yashwant has already taken steps to move the court.
Sure, but let me quote to you what the man says about Yashwant Sinha. He says, you see, Yashwant Sinha is not an honest man. He takes money from everybody. That may well be libelous, but that is what the tapes say. That tape was available to the Prime Minister. He reacted to those part of the ArcheAge allegations that touched on you. He has not reacted to the ArcheAge allegations that touch on Sinha.
Yes, but when Yashwant Sinha goes to the Prime Minister, explains the situation, and moves the court of law, I don't see why after that he should be brought into this.
Are you suggesting that if you had also moved to court of law, you might still be defense minister today?
Well, I did not want to move the court because there was nothing for me to go and clarify in a court of law.
Now that you've raised the subject, will you consider taking the hellcard.com to a court of law for defamation or libel?
You know, I know how litigation can be, firstly, a very time-consuming thing, and secondly, the way it keeps on meandering, it's not worthwhile. However, if I get such legal advice, why not?
Have you sought such legal advice?
Yeah, I won't say no.
In other words, you are considering taking the hellcar, provided you get the appropriate legal advice to law.
That's right.
And when that happens, do you expect the Prime Minister to turn around and invite you back? Because after all, then you'll be on an equal level with Yashwant Sinha.
No.
Suddenly the difference will have evaporated.
No, because when I go to the court of law, I'll need a lot of time to deal with that matter.
And so even if you're invited back to government, if you've gone to a court of law, you will say no?
Well, I have not thought over it, but if your point is whether I'm interested in going back to government, I have been quoting to a lot of people because the Prime Minister, I think, made a statement that in 4 months' time all this thing will be cleared. And when I was asked, what will you do? So I said, one of the greatest practitioners of politics in the last century was the Labour Party leader, Harold Wilson.
A week is a long time in politics.
A week is a long time in politics.
In other words, you're saying, I'm not going to give you my answer. I may well go back to government if invited. That's what you're saying.
No, I'm not saying that.
You are. You're not denying it.
No, I'm only saying that between now and 4 months.
What you're actually saying is, ask me when I'm invited. Don't ask me to give an answer before I'm invited.
No, what I'm saying is there could be many developments.
Let me ask you
politics.
a slightly different question. If the Prime Minister appoints an interim defence minister, how will you react to that appointment?
Well, I have just now, when I was coming here, I had a phone call from my very close friend, whose name you have taken earlier in this interview, that is Jaswant Singh, and he has taken over the responsibility of looking after the Defence Ministry on the orders of the Prime Minister.
Are you pleased about that? Are you dismayed? Does it worry you that perhaps this door is being closed despite the fact the NDA had left it open?
I'm absolutely pleased about that, and when he showed tremendous reluctance when he spoke to me about this, and I insisted that he should take this responsibility.
Let's come back to the central point that we began this discussion about. Do you still insist that you resigned to uphold the morale of the defence forces, and there is no other reason, and that all the speculation that I've enunciated in detail, which makes your resignation look fishy, is simply false speculation?
Yes, I will insist on it to the end of my life.
Then let me put something to you. The only conceivable way that your continuation in office as Defence Minister could have affected the morale of the armed forces must be connected by one simple incident. The fact that your party president was offered money in your residence by people who introduced themselves as defence agents. That's about the only thing that your continuation in office could affect morale by.
Well, my party president functions as party president from a room in my home, which is a government residence. And in this house, I have only one room which I use. The rest of it is for public causes.
So you're saying don't see that building as my residence, see it at least as much as a party office.
That's right.
But do you think, even though, as you repeatedly said on television, she's done nothing wrong, do you think she was indiscreet? Do you think she left herself open to being badly misunderstood, and today you are paying the penalty for that?
No, I would say that whether she's about the discreetness or about the misunderstanding, the more important thing is to have a look at those tapes. What are those tapes? To what extent have they been manipulated?
Do you believe the tapes have been manipulated?
Manipulated is not the word. My belief is that they have been concocted to a point where I don't know what kind of crimes have been committed in the process.
What sort of crimes do you think have been committed?
Well, listen, to suggest that the entire defence procurement establishment of ours is having at every stage persons who could be bought. Can there be anything more absurd than that, or more obnoxious than that?
You said that the tapes have been concocted, they've been manipulated. You suggested that in fact the tapes are, although I'm using the word, false. Is this likely to be the basis of the legal inquiry that you said a moment ago you're seeking?
One of the factors, yeah.
So it's possible that if you get the right sort of legal inquiry, you could take the Hellcar.com to court on the grounds that they have manufactured false evidence.
Yes.
You're going to take them to court on the grounds of defamation?
Well, defamation is also a possibility. That is, it will all depend on what advice I get from my lawyers.
You know, the Indian legal system is tortuous, and defamation is a difficult case to win.
Yes, I'm aware of that.
Are you confident that if you go to court, you'll win?
Well, that's far too a speculative question, where an answer may be difficult at the moment.
But if you go to court, you'd only do it if you're confident of winning, otherwise you won't go to court.
It is not confidence of winning, it's a question of seeking justice against those who have put the security of our country at risk.
And there, Mr. Fernandes, we must end this interview. Thank you very much for talking to Hardtalk India.
Thank you.